Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We have a guy here, a friend of mine. I learned from him in terms of administrative stuff. He was always an intelligent guy. They call him a certain name, and maybe he will just give you the alias and everything else. So, without further ado, I want you to introduce yourself and give your background and when you came to Canada.
Okay, Alvin or Midget, thanks for inviting me to participate in this most important project. I say it's important because it really is a documentary of the 1970s in Toronto, which played pivotal roles in the lives of so many of us during that period. I migrated to Toronto on the 2nd of May, 1970. And that stemmed from the uprising or Black Power movement in 1970 that was taking place in Trinidad, where my parents, in particular my mother, felt that I was becoming too engaged in that activity. And she hastily shipped me out to my aunt, who sponsored me and all those things. So it was like one day you're in Trinidad and the next day in Toronto with an aunt who you knew about, but didn't really have much interaction with, because when she left, I was pretty young. When she left to go to England. And so I always, when I talk about my stay in Canada, I always mention her because of the fact that she really paid attention to me in Canada in the early days when I got there. Alina, deceased now, but her memory and her contribution towards my development, I've always, appreciated. So I came to Canada in 1970, and I immediately had some goals that I set for myself. The first one was to acquire grade 13, because when I came to Canada, although I sat the GC or whatever it was at that time, I never waited for my results. And so when they assessed me in the Ontario Education Department, they classified me as grade 11. So I had to, because I had always wanted to do tertiary education, they told me I had to do some correspondence courses to upgrade my academic standing, which I did. It took me about a year and a half to move from grade 11 to grade 13. And it's interesting when I reflect on that period, because what happened, that process was you registered with a school. I think I registered with Parkdale Collegiate. You didn't attend classes in person, but they sent you the lessons and you responded on paper, you mailed it to them, they mailed back the correction and that kind of thing. It's almost like the era that we're in now with this virtual learning. So I went through that and I got my grade 13, and then I went on to York University in 1973, where I did my first degree in sociology and Latin American and Caribbean studies. And then I graduated in 1976, and then in 1977, I did another degree.
Okay, hold on. Before you reach 76 and 77, we want to do it sequential. See that you're a big, intelligent guy, and you had some success coming in 73. What we're covering here is in 1975. So within that time, you're concentrating on your academics. And I know you were always kind of low-key. I know within that time you were going York, but you were always a guy kind of low-key. From a little preempt we did, I understand that you have a lot of information in regards to the origination of the Street Guys League. So I think the people would like to hear from you all the information pertaining to the league and the way the league came about.
Okay, before the league, and the reason why I ventured into that little academic period was that out of that academic period, as you know, we always played sports. And through my association with some university people from the other Caribbean islands, I got involved in playing football more than I really liked to, because I was more interested in cricket. And during the period 1970 to 74, with my uncle Lover, we played a lot of football down at Parkdale and Lansdowne.
Foxy, somehow
Okay, and probably too the connection. I don't think I've just noticed it came up saying it's unstable. Yes, during that early period of my mixture of academics and sports, I played a lot of football or soccer in Toronto at Lansdowne and Parkdale. And instrumental in those early days of that early morning, and Sunday in particular, Sunday morning football or soccer, for people like my uncle Winston Lover Haywood, a guy called Eddie Merchant from South. That's where I met one of my long-lasting friends, Selwyn Cowie, during that Lansdowne era. I met also people like a guy called Peter, who was more into fashion. I met Doyle, who ended up playing, I think, for Irie at one stage. I met later on, Remy came in, but Remy came in later in 75, I think, or 76. Because that nucleus remained, although the Street Guys was inexistent, we still had that original line of playing first matches. So when Street Guy was formed in 74, I think 74, yeah. 75 down at St. Clair. My engagement there was more in terms of administration. I worked a lot with Bunny, who in my estimation is the founder of the league, and Kato and Arthur. Kato. And you know, when I reflect on that period, in that period like now, in the 21st century, what I was doing may have been perceived as a conflict of interest, because I was both administrator of the league and later on administrator of players. So I was doing a lot of administrative things. And now, you know, some people might say, you know, how you can't administrate the league and still administrate in the club.
No, well, the soccer/football don't run that way, because most of the people that form leagues are people that had franchises or whatever, whether it be Eddie Hart or whatever, Carlos Runrick, we could go. So that was okay. That was okay.
That's okay. All right. So from Sinclair, we moved to Bathurst, and then, well, for me, when the real genesis of the league was in when we moved to Flemingdon Park, which was really offered more than soccer.
Okay, we don't want to run to Flemingdon Park so much. We want to give you what you do. Ladies and gentlemen, the person we're speaking to here, he was the first MVP of the Street Guys Soccer League. And so maybe that perception he's talking about, and nobody had a problem with it. And, you know, yeah, they give credit where credit is due. He was the MVP, you know, as we can hear now, which we didn't know. Some of the members of the players team didn't know that he was part of the executive. So there was no conflict there, because even his teammates didn't know. I didn't know until he told me recently. So okay. So there was really no conflict.
But I think why people may not have known too, I guess, is my style, my operational style. I do what is necessary without blowing my horn, or, you know, I just prefer to operate that way. If there's something to be done, get it done. Who knows, and who don't, well, life goes on.
So I didn't think the league was as serious in 75, but that whole openness with Flemingdon Park, it was definitely a different atmosphere. Just the environment alone, the ambience of the whole park. Did you see now that you're a committee member, and a lot of your friends and people and players now is gonna wonder what's up with that? How you look at it, either from a player's point of view, because if I remember correctly, being one of the franchises of the league, you're very much on hands-on on players, and you must have a certain amount of pride reaching Flemingdon from a committee level, and then how things took off.
Yeah, I was very proud to be involved and to dedicate more time to players, because, you know, it became, after 75, it became very realistic to me that we had to spend more time developing players as a club, as an organization. I think the name alone, players, represented a certain kind of expectation that we had to look good, we had to look fashionable, we had to be trendsetters. And therefore, when we looked at our uniform, we didn't necessarily play in football gear. We played in gear that people could line with socializing,
That's
you
true.
know, that kind of thing. So that our uniform always was different, always unique. And the average person could have gone to a line, uniform and would have been accepted.
That's sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes a bad thing, because
Well, yeah,
it depends.
It depends if it's like my friend by now, you probably wouldn't wear it, but
So we go 76, 77. Yeah, we got sponsorship from Mugs, Tropical Barbershop, and yeah, people came and people left. But when when did you leave, or within? You said, when did you leave actually?
I left Toronto, but before I must mention this part too. In 1979, that was my first attempt at returning to Trinidad on a permanent basis. So I left in Carnival 1979, and I stayed until June 1979 in Trinidad. And that is when I really felt the vibes and tried to understand what was happening in Trinidad and whether or not I really wanted to return. Because from day one in Toronto, I always felt that, I have to come back to Trinidad. But for whatever reason, that was driving me. So that when I came back in 79, I did some testing until June, and I got the vibes of it. I remember that year was the World Netball Championship that was taking place in Trinidad, which was shared between Trinidad and New Zealand, and I think Australia. And I left that same Saturday of the final, and I returned to Toronto on a Saturday evening. And right early the Sunday morning, I was in Flemingdon Park. Like if nothing happened, because how could you be in Toronto and not be on Flemingdon Park on a Sunday?
Okay, I'm not sure we want to accept that, because we know the eventuality is that you left us high and dry, but
no, at the time, no, in 79 it was a trial. It was a trial period, and so that when I came back, I was clear in my mind exactly where my journey should be. So, and if I may add this a bit, so between 79 and 81, I went back to tertiary education, and that's where I did my master's program in education. And because that facilitated my return to Trinidad in a professional way. I left Toronto to return to Trinidad in January. I think it's the 8th of January, 1981. And since that time, I've been domiciled here.
Just as you mentioned, and all those things that happened in 79, it was a pivotal year also for the club players and the league, because I don't know if you recall that that's when you and I were more officially endorsed to bring out the under-23, where we were forced as a marquee team to try to compete and maintain our standard with Redford and all these young franchises.
I remember very clearly, and some of the early trials and discussions, and even some members who weren't in support of it. I remember that, we had some very animated discussions as a team as to who should be part of that under-23 grouping, who should be like coach. I remember distinctly some real discussions taking place as to how we go forward with that project. But at the end of the day, I think we prevailed. We convinced the membership that that was the way to go.
Yeah, because it would have been a pressure on you and I as league representative now that as a marquee team we couldn't feel a team. And I think that's when we bring in Aldo and the Pablo and all those guys. We had to find players. And, but we did win the knockout after Driftwood was the team. We need to give big up for Driftwood, because Driftwood was a young team with Whistler and them.
Before you go there, I in one of the interviews, I heard you all mention the referee badge, and if I recall, I was also involved in that referee course. You and I and Saki, as a matter of fact, I'm going to send you my badge. I still have my badge.
We see that, ladies and gentlemen. I couldn't recall that at all.
Yeah, I'm going to send you the badge.
Yeah. Because that was the turning point, because remember we had to start thinking in terms of refereeing for the league too, and having qualifications. So it was something to have in the back of your pocket besides
because on occasions if a referee didn't turn up or if something happened on the Flemingdon Park, I will referee some games. And I felt that, you know, maybe why not get more qualified again or more knowledgeable of that whole refereeing business. And that's how I was motivated to do the referee course. As a matter of fact, I refereed quite a few games up on Flemingdon Park. And again, because of my interest in being certified as a referee. So I wanted some practical experience. Because even when I returned to Trinidad, I refereed in the TTFA in the Northeastern League, which was from Barataria to Toko. I did a refereeing there for a year or so.
Information here helped you moving forward?
Yes, because to register in the TTFA, I had to have some certification in refereeing, and I produced my Ontario badge to show that.
So that's good. So now, how you look at the competition? Seeing that we're on Flemo, we can stay on Flemo. How you look at the competition? You know, there was rivalries. I don't know how much income, and rivalry mean the two top, or maybe the three top teams. And who you recall as the team, the rivals?
I think the major rival was Exhibitors. But in sports, you know, any team can win on any day. But the team, I think we mentally prepared for. The team, we ensure that we did covered all the bases for when we played against those Exhibitors. Because they had some little players like Rudy, early days of Saki. People like a guy from Marima, Indian guy who used to play a midfield. I see him just there. Can't remember his name, but then they had Rasta Mike, who may not have been the most skilled person, but very aggressive and assertive in the defense. That you had to be, you know, you had to be very careful when you go around Mike. we had, and people. I think the park players Exhibitors game was a sellout crowd in the park. People just love to see that rivalry. And I think we as footballers at the time, but soccer players, we all enjoyed it too, because it really tested our mettle. I remember I scored a winning goal. I don't know if you recall that. We played them in a knockout in 1979 to be exact. I just come back up, and we played them in a knockout final, and we won 2-1. And I headed in one. Of course, headed in one, and was so coincidental. The defender who was marking me, or closest to me, was deceased Stecco. And every time after that, I would remind him, I say, you know, you're a big national player, and I jump over you and score. You know, so it was that kind of healthy banter.
So that's when Stecco went with Exhibitors? Was that Exhibitors or one of those? Did he
was in Exhibitors in 79, yeah, he was Exhibitors. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Because as I said, I always remember that header, and Stecco was nearest to me. And even when we met in Trinidad before he passed away, that's the first thing we used to talk about. And I was, you know, we used to go to 5 minutes, we'll talk about that, you know, which was nice.
So if you had to go back as you were in 81, and you had to tell people about Flemo, I see you send me some pictures and stuff. What is etched in your mind about the Flemo thing, you know, in terms of the flavor, and even you would even see it, how it evolved from the Amberia stage with you even being in the committee, how you look at that whole evolution?
Well, you know, I think it was football and it was soccer. It was based on that. The other fringes came because of the result of the soccer, quality of the soccer. So that although initially people saw it as a Sunday morning, you know, a really fun thing, something to do on a Sunday in Toronto in the summertime. But when I reflect on it, the grounding of Flemingdon Park was the quality of the soccer, the competitiveness, the inter-island rivalry, because as you know, most of the teams had this element of who from Trinidad, who from Jamaica, who from St. Vincent. And that was critical, even now in terms of how we see the Caribbean, that always brings a different element to when Caribbean people participate. Whatever they're doing, whether it's football, soccer, cricket, whatever, once there's that mixture of inter-Caribbeanness, the level always increase. And Flemingdon Park, in my view, reflected that. Because another top series of games when we played the Jamaican-based teams, how the rivalry was, you know, so that, and even where Exhibitors may have also been mainly Trinidadian people. But because, again, they had people more from South Trinidad as opposed to North Trinidad, you know, those kind of rivalries, you know, became very critical and added the flavor. The other things that influenced that competitive nature of Flemingdon Park was the crowds. I say that because people not only watched the game, but they were emotionally involved in the game. And out of those emotional things, a lot of relationships and social lives periods existed after the game. So that we may have a stern rivalry on the field. But when that is over, we go by with snow cone man and eat a snow cone, or somebody open their trunk and you know, we just have been cussing or fighting on the field. But after that, it's a Caribbean love, you know, we're back to normal. And you know, so that to me, listen, if that could have continued up to today, I think Toronto would have been a lot different place to be.
Okay. Well, and you see it up to 81, so it ended in 92. So there was a lot of history after you, a lot of rivalries, born rivalries.
And I'm glad you talked about that after I left, because you know, when I left in 81, around Carnival 82, when most of the guys will have come back home and we'll have lying by the savannah or something, I was, you know, I was kind of surprised and shocked to hear about two things. One, that Bunny had kind of moved away from the league, and then the name of the league had changed. And you know, and to be honest, I really like the uniqueness of the name. Now, later on, I got to understand the importance or the necessity for changing it. But I always thought that you know, that was a unique name, and it represented more than just a name, more than just an experience. But you know, things happen, things evolve, and you know, things change. But so I don't know if you could help me with those two things that I've been trying to figure out.
Well, what happened is in terms of you and I being on the committee, and in I think 80, there was some little, I wasn't there, so but I think I get it from somebody, a witness, or even Mr. Jupiter himself, where there was something, and it was unfortunate that he was upset enough that he felt that he didn't want to go, right? And you could see
you know, sometimes, yeah, that's an individual's prerogative to continue or not continue with a project. But you know, but the thing would have been that being the founder, you know, it would have been a very tough decision for him to make. So it must have really, whatever it was, must have really demotivated him. But as you say, well, you know, these things happen.
Yeah, and with the sentiment of now, even hoping now that the league is defunct, that it was functioning, that was my feeling at the time, that it should go on, because it was in the heat of everything, and more or less it meant a little more to me too, because you know, there was always a little situation with Irie. So the park came my home, you know, in terms of getting things going, and I took it upon myself with Dezo and Kopi and other people, and Roy, that we would keep the league going. So I got the numbers of the teams and stuff. Now, in terms of the league, I don't know, you had to be there when we had the All-Star Interleague. Were you there when we?
No.
Well, all right. The MTSA start doing Interleague All-Stars. And it's from there you start seeing the discrepancies. This is where we have to step up attendance, you know, uniformity, you know, these things, because you know, you're playing high profile leagues with uniform, everything else and stuff. I think we played in a white t-shirt in the beginning and stuff. And you know, that's not, even from players, that's not our level. And then it just, to me, it just looked like the name, seeing that we go in different places. So much so it's not just changing it to Toronto Caribbean. We start being invited for national to represent Trinidad and Tobago and stuff. So it was enterprising, is a type of change of the whole. It's not really the image, because as Black people, you would always remain Black people. But it's like Rudolph Ottley, your name precedes you. Okay, and to me, it was something that universal, nothing wrong with Caribbean, Toronto Caribbean and stuff, you know, and we went that way and we started representing. And that's what I'm saying, based on this history we're doing here, people would realize it evolved into Caribbean Stars, it evolves into Metro Lands, where, you know, they start at least harnessing things from the community that it was worth something, right? So that's the whole deal.
But I think we should be thankful that you and the Dezo and the group, took up the mantle, because it would have been real sad for it to have just disappeared like that after 1981. Because, and maybe somebody else might have done it, yeah? But we don't know about that. But we're sure that you all took it up. And that was to me, that is very important, because Toronto needed that. That was a lifeline to Toronto in the summertime. No matter all the, things will happen in the park and whatever. But at the end of the day, people felt the park was a connectivity to other people. It was a park where you knew if you wanted to find midgets, you wanted to find Loney or anybody, you go by the park. And that was I think continuing that, even though personnel change or teams change, I think you all should be really commended for taking on that mantle. But again, you were in it already, so you knew what you were getting into.
Yeah. It was the and again, when I reached that, I also hit a frustration link, just like Mr. Jupiter, because we're human. So when I reached that thing based on different circumstances with the team, we're winning too much, I turned it over to somebody, but a better, easier transition, and stayed there, continue helping with the league booklets up to this point. So we have the history of the league right down to the last. So there's no, because I stayed and make sure I was in a supportive room with him. And we also made sure that Mr. Jupiter would come to the awards and presentation and be still a part, because it's hard, you can't beat up on a person who decide, as you say, they seen it differently from how it was. It's kind of hard, but that's just the way it goes in life, So based on Flemingdon being sort of the end all for you, who left in 81, were you around for the IRE tournament, and how you look at that, how the blend was?
Again, that was another for me, because again, as I said before, I'm not really, I was not a big ball player like you guys, but it was really a real social event to look forward to. When I remember, I think it's behind Dufferin Mall, the first one, Brockton
Stadium.
And Lamport and these places. I mean, it used to be exciting because I had a chance to see teams from Trinidad or teams of other North American cities. And for me, it was a social event. That's where I would go online. I watched the game too, but it was more for me to socialize. Because I know I'm not interested in going out on that. I know it'll be a mismatch to go out amongst you superstars. So I helped in the crowd part of it.
In your back and forth now, we incorporating the music. I know you're not a DJ and stuff, but I know.
No, you're wrong.
Players. I know
you're wrong. No. Let me correct you on that. I was not an official. I should say I was not a public DJ like Power Cats and Macy and all these guys. But I was a DJ in my own right. I played in weddings, birthday parties, graduation, and all those things. So be careful. Be careful. Don't go there with me.
Yeah, right. All right. I'll take that slap. That's okay. That's a little one. All right. So what do you think about us encompassing now the music, that part of the entertainment part of this whole, although it's a soccer history?
Again, to me, it's a continuation of life in the Caribbean. That's how Caribbean people are. You go to a wake, you have music. You go to a wedding, obviously you have music. You go to a sporting event, you have music. And Street Guys and Flemingdon Park, it was necessary for that kind of live entertainment during and even after the game, because most times, the game will end about 8 p.m. Still sunlight, but most people have their trunks up and music will be blasting. So that, yes, the game over, but we now get into our own. On one side, we're hearing some heavy reggae. Next side, we're hearing some calypso, because soca wasn't really as big yet. But you have all this Caribbean music emanating from the different vehicles around the park. And so people stay and become a social event. And therefore, when we went further than that, in terms of like 1340 at Sinclair, and then we went down to Hagamon, And you know, all these places which to me I have had some fun memories of, you know. But those I have always, even today I speak my son Kareem about those days in 1348. Again, you see, place like Flemingdon Park, 1348 Hagaman, represented more than just a building. There were institutions where Caribbean people could meet and intermingle and feel a sense of homeliness, of comfort, because of what was provided in at these venues. So that when you go to 1548 and you meet people who, you know, Sunday morning, you and them on the field battling it out. But you also know that during this period between now and Sunday morning is a love. Everybody watching each other's back. Everybody, you know, making sure that you're okay. And out of that, I have made some really long-lasting friends, like, you know, my Mavis, Althea Bunny's wife, Marva, a whole bunch of women I met through that interaction there at 1348, and up to today when we meet, whether it's in Trinidad or Toronto, you know, that love and vibe still continues. And so that I'm saying it set the foundation for a lot of relationships to develop. We played sports hard, but we also party harder. And that was critical.
Well said, well said. Are you aware that there was a substitute for Flemo after a thing that called the Malvern League? When you came
I heard about it. I've never been to the games up there, but I heard about it too with my brothers and, you know, people when they come down, I'll ask them about what's going on up there. But I've never been able to be up in that part.
It was tough, kind of irreplaceable, just like Dezo, but, you know, life goes on and we all had to kind of survive. It's a survival world, you know. So, Rudolph, I want to thank you for giving me all this information. And before we close, I just want to say, I can't recall how you introduced yourself. Did you introduce yourself as a doctor?
No, I don't do that.
No, you don't do that. Well, I'll let the public know that Mr. Ottley has gotten his doctorate, and he's in certain circles, I guess, use press whatever buttons he wants to at whatever time, but he's also known as Dr. Rudolph Ottley. So see again, there you go. We wait till the end now, because I was debating that. I didn't think I heard you introduce yourself as Dr. Rudolph Ottley.
No, I wouldn't do that. You know me. That as rightly said, that those are that kind of introductions for certain kinds of arenas or certain. If we're talking street guys and talking early development in Toronto, that is, to me, that is irrelevant.
Okay, but I just want the public to know where you elevate yourself and where you dedicate and you put the work in, because you don't get that overnight. That's not an overnight process, you know. And how was that for you? How was that, you know, getting there? Did other things open up just for the young people to realize now that, you know, these are ways they gotta go?
Well, as I mentioned earlier on, that is a culmination of what I started in Toronto when I told you I did my move from grade 11 to grade 13, my correspondence course. That was the journey I started. So I went and did all my BAs and BEd and then my masters. And when I returned to Trinidad, I continued something I was doing in Toronto, which was to collect and research Calypso. And out of that, because most times that we travel in Toronto or out of Toronto, I will go to malls. And in the mall, there's always world music or something like that, where records on Trinidad existed. I've collected some of the most unique albums on Calypso and Steel Band in North America that we don't have in Trinidad. And out of that interest, I continued when I returned home to do my research. And I decided that, you know, it's one thing to do the research, but to share it and to legitimize it, I had to put it in the academic field, and which I did to the University of Trinidad and Tobago. And so in 2015, I received my PhD in cultural studies. But again, that stemmed from that initial idea that I am going to go to the highest I could in terms of academics. And I guess out of that, I have produced and written self-published 13 books on Calypso, with my major focus on women in Calypso and the whole evolution of the women in the art forms out of the barricades of Port of Spain, and how they have managed to survive and continue to be in 2020 and 2021 to be the main forces in the calypso arena in Trinidad.
Okay, so there you go. You introduced yourself as Foxy.
No, I didn't. Again, I wouldn't do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, he has to go with the Foxy because this is not a name I'm giving him. In 1976, when we came on the Flemingdon Park, we all had our aliases in the back of our shirt. He had Foxy in the back of his shirt, so he has to live with it. It's something he lived with for a while. I don't know. I know he's Dr. Ottley and all this thing, but for this point in time, we'll have to carry the Foxy for a little bit. All right. So Foxy, I want to thank you for giving me the time and the information, and you did well. You know, again, irreplaceable in terms of administration, and stay safe.
But I also want to thank you for, again, as I said before, that you took up that mantle after, you know, in the 90s to continue with Street Guys, in the 80s, I should say, 82. And I know you have always been a committed footballer, administrator, and this project you're on is really important. And I think if there's one thing you should be commended for, is ensuring that this comes to fruition. This is really important, historically and otherwise. Very, very important. We need, you see, a lot of the times we as people, Caribbean, African people, we do not document. And we end up living off of folk tales and stories we remember, we vaguely. Because even now, I am also having some challenges remembering some of the things in 70. And from what the interviews I've listened to, people are also having that same challenge. And so that, let's say if you don't do this now and you wait for the next 10 years, you could imagine what could come out of it. There'll be all kind of guesstimations and all kind of falsehoods and all kind of, you know, so that this is very important that you continue getting this information now, whilst people could still remember, and therefore the legacy will remain of the importance of Flemingdon Park and Street Guys over the years in Toronto.
But as you bring that point, one thing I want the public to be assured of, and as I told you, what the public has to be comfortable with, I stayed with Roy John, the last administrator, right to the end. So the only year I didn't have was the last year, because I was with him till 91, and he just made the 92 available to me. So even when people are not retaining properly, I think the exercise is so nice, because whether they retain or don't retain, people want to see people. People want to see you, yeah. Whether you retain or not. And God forbid, even about the retainers, it's nice if they retain, but they can't change the black and white, you know? I think it's nice to see you and hear, you know, what you can retain and what you can retain. So yeah, the information had to be accurate.
I have that book and one from Irie. I don't know if you remember the Irie one.
Yes.
When I was reviewing it to see if there's anything, but those are things I kept from Toronto.
So you had the same thing in you.
But, you know, I think my understanding of self, of me, is that I always prefer to be in the background. The limelight, something, I mean, I will do things that may eventually project me forward. But I always prefer to be observer, listener, taking my own notes rather than be the rubber rouser. However, if I have to rubber rouse, I'll do it. But it will come after serious analysis and thought and whatever. So I guess that's why in Toronto, most people say, you know, but you're so quiet, you're so laid back, and
if only they knew.
If only they
knew. Person starting the fight. And one thing I used to like about you and Dezo is that once you see we sit down and we make decisions and stuff, when we out there, you guys would be the first one to try to make sure the implementation work. And I used to like that about you and Dezo, which could have made me concentrate on other things that I didn't have to, you know, because and that was the big miss.
Yeah, because you can't be going to war and the men who you're going to with, you're not sure if they're watching your back. You know, so like when we start there and we say we're doing this, we know you're the ball man, we can't compete with you, but the life, the process involves other things than just going on the field. And we have to ensure that those things are put in place so you could concentrate on scoring the goals.
Foxy, let me thank you again for giving me the opportunity to get your information. You did well. As I say, you will always be missed. You're replaceable. And you stay safe.
You too, man, and thanks again. Continue the good work. Say hello to the family.
All right.